In this day and age, it's not easy for a football player to move countries and keep the same level of performance, let alone get even better. In the past, a lot of players have struggled to carry the weight of expectations and have crumbled under pressure. Today at GoalSide, we're going to talk about the sad demise of Bastian Schweinsteiger's career in Europe when he left Bayern Munich to join Manchester United. The German midfielder arrived with a lot of fanfare, but failed to replicate the form that puts him up there with the greatest players to have ever been produced by Germany. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay in touch with everything that's happening in the footballing world. Make sure to look out for a question during the video, which will give you a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. In today's piece, we're going to talk about all of Schweinsteiger's achievements at Bayern Munich and for the German national side. We're then going to talk about how his promising move to Old Trafford was greeted by the club's fans. Then we're going to take a sad little trip to the time when Jose Mourinho banished the German to playing with the reserves, which was not received well by anyone who loves the game. However, Schweinsteiger never made any headlines about his treatment and always dealt with these things in a graceful manner. We're also going to talk about the sporting reasons behind the midfielder's failed career at Old Trafford. So without further ado, let's begin. Schweinsteiger's name will always remain synonymous with the achievements of the German national team and Bayern Munich. The stylish midfielder won the World Cup, Champions League and several Bundesliga titles. With such immense qualities that you would not see in every number 6, Schweinsteiger was a superb technician and distributor who even packed quite a shot from his prodigious right foot. A perfect embodiment of a player in his role, the German oozed with class and marshalled his troops to perfection. Under Louis van Gaal, when the Dutchman was at Bayern, Schweinsteiger's role changed. Before that, the German was operating as a left winger. Under Van Gaal, however, Schweini would start operating as a holding midfielder, but operated mostly as a deep-lying playmaker. During his time at Bayern Munich, Schweinsteiger kept evolving into an elite midfielder. The 2010 World Cup semi-final against Spain was another turning point in his career. Spain took the game to the Germans, and La Roja's pressing game ensured that Schweinsteiger did not have enough time on the ball. The lack of dynamism affected his impact on that game as Xavi and Andres Iniesta flourished at Schweinsteiger's expense. The German learned his lesson, and it became clear that playing deeper really improves his performance, as evidenced by Germany's triumphant 2014 World Cup campaign, where he was praised by Joachim Löw for his good organisations and intelligence. The final game against Argentina proved that this was an elite midfielder. Throughout the 90 minutes, Schweini effectively put Lionel Messi out of the game while playing in a deeper role, completing more passes than anyone on the pitch. From an inconsistent wayward winger to a World Cup winning holding midfielder who was also a master strategist, a general and the best performer in the biggest game of the year. Based on all that and how much he would change a team's fortunes, it made sense that Manchester United were constantly linked with the Bayern star. However, Schweinsteiger only arrived in 2015. It seemed like a perfect move for the Romantics. A multiple silverware winning champion was coming to the Theatre of Dreams. Many expected this arrival as another point in the renaissance in Schweinsteiger's career. Sadly though, the fact that he was allowed to leave the Allianz Arena was a sign of how he was no longer seen as the man to lead Bayern Munich into the future. Cracks had already started appearing in his game. Bayern Munich was always Schweinsteiger's club, but Pep Guardiola had stopped trusting his midfield marshal. The Spaniard admitted that the last 3 years were not that great, and at the age of 31, Schweini would reunite with a manager who played an instrumental role in his evolution. But even Van Gaal had given up on him eventually. During December, I said that I expect more, and he was very disappointed I said that. But I think I can say that because my expectation is higher, said Van Gaal during his final spring in charge. Manchester United has bought him, even though he's now 31. So I had to convince the board to buy him because he's a very good player and he always gives a team more balance. Clearly, the Bavarians had started planning life after Schweinsteiger already and were looking at the likes of Joshua Kimmich and Thiago Alcantara to guide the club into the future. And when Louis van Gaal was replaced by Jose Mourinho, we thought that this would be the moment where the Old Trafford faithful would get to see the real Schweinsteiger. Sadly though, it didn't work out. The Portuguese tactician may have many faults, but if looked at analytically, was brave enough to let the world know how far Schweinsteiger's stock had fallen. The German was no more able to impose himself in games and was eventually left to train with the youngsters. And while it was Mourinho who effectively ended Schweinsteiger's career in Europe, it was Pep Guardiola and then Louis van Gaal who had already realised that the German was no longer the all-dominating player he used to be. Although Mourinho did welcome him back into first-team training and even gave him a run-out in a few games, Schweinsteiger was no more the midfield maestro who would guide United into the future. Regardless of how he was treated by the United manager, Schweinsteiger always kept his cool, and you would never see him speak to journalists or have his agent go to the media and complain about the unfair treatment he received. While many saw Schweinsteiger's treatment as a sign of Mourinho clearing the remaining vestiges of Louis van Gaal's decision, if we analyse things more rationally, it would make sense. The likes of Memphis Depay and Morgan Schneiderlin were sold in January not because they were LVG players, but because their performances were simply not consistent enough. And though Depay has since gone on to establish his reputation at Lyon, the same cannot be said for Schneiderlin. Schweinsteiger, on the other hand, was, to put it simply, discarded from the group, but to this day holds no bitterness towards what transpired. The way he is, Schweinsteiger would himself admit that he was no longer the player he used to be, and continuing a career in Europe would never have given him a fairy tale ending. Sadly though, Schweinsteiger the man, rather than Schweinsteiger the player, left a major impression on the hearts of the United faithful. It was definitely sad to see Schweini leave Old Trafford without rolling back the years. United fans craved a few good performances, but little did they know that they were getting a player from Bayern Munich whose best days were behind him. Then there were other reasons why Schweinsteiger never made a case for a regular place in the starting 11. The German spent quite a lot of time on the treatment table, far more often. During his 18 months in English football, the midfielder played in 35 games and scored 2 goals. However, there were always glimpses of greatness. The former Bayern Munich man recorded a passing accuracy of 85% in 13 Premier League games, which is quite a good return for someone who's been dismissed as a failure. Maybe the numbers could have been better had Mourinho given him more chances, but you have to give it to the German for always throwing his support to the club. I will be ready if the team needs me. This is all I can say about my current situation. I want to thank the fans for their amazing support over recent weeks, Schweinsteiger once said when fans were having a hard time understanding why he wasn't getting any game time. Although he never meant to leave Manchester United so soon, it had become necessary. His heartfelt message once again showed an elite midfielder who oozed with class. I'm sad to leave so many friends at Manchester United. I've enjoyed working with the managers, the players and staff here and wish them all the best in the future. But hey, how about we look at some of the most memorable moments of Schweinsteiger's career at Old Trafford? Premier League debut. Schweini made his EPL debut on August 8, 2015 when he came on as a substitute for Michael Carrick. In his 30-minute cameo, the German did manage to get himself booked. First Premier League goal. It took Schweinsteiger 14 matches to score his first goal in the Premier League. The midfielder scored the equaliser in a game against Leicester City, who would go on to lift the title against all odds. Getting frozen out. Following a series of injury and the arrival of Mourinho, Schweinsteiger starts finding it hard to break into the starting 11. In fact, the German had so much free time on his hands that he started developing a hobby of cosplay. When we say Schweinsteiger, we say a man who's always positive regardless of how bad things are around him. If you look at his Instagram posts from during that time, Schweinsteiger would be discovering the city and just enjoying the sights. Scoring in the FA Cup. After being frozen out for what seemed like ages, Schweinsteiger finally got a chance to start a game which was an FA Cup tie against Wigan Athletic. It was during that time where he would score his final goal for the Red Devils. Paul Pogba? Schweinsteiger's arrival at the club nearly coincided with that of Paul Pogba, who was supposed to be the cornerstone of the club's revival after years of mediocrity since the retirement of Sir Alex Ferguson. With the Frenchman being given a rather versatile midfield role, it became clear that Schweinsteiger would not get enough chances to start anyway. Furthermore, the fact that Mourinho preferred using Marouane Fellaini in the midfield meant that the German was always going to look in at the club from the outside. Perhaps the most painful memory of Schweinsteiger's career would be the EFL Cup final, where he wasn't in the squad as the Red Devils won the cup. A famous picture of the World Cup winner taking a picture of his teammates just goes on to show how far he'd fallen down the pecking order. But kudos to the midfielder for still being such a good sport. Adieu. A move to the MLS, therefore, made all the sense in the world. And this is where we ask you the question we promised. Which MLS side did Schweinsteiger join when he left Manchester United? As legends come, there aren't many bigger than Schweinsteiger, even though the short sojourn at Old Trafford made us forget how good he actually was. In his prime, there wasn't a more commanding midfielder who would demand 100% commitment from those around him. Schweini was never the sort of player who would ever admit defeat or expect his or his teammates' standards to go down. Perhaps this is why he did not complain about his spell at United, knowing that he was not good enough to cut it in a big team anymore. But when it comes to big performances and delivering on the big stage, no one will ever forget the role Schweinsteiger played in the 2014 World Cup final, where he constantly nullified Argentina's offensive influence.